there's some conventional wisdom. Is that even the right word? There's this idea that it is okay for some types of characters to be overpowered, just ridiculously overtuned at higher levels because they are weaker at lower levels. And so you have to kind of earn that progression. I think this is a very strange idea for a tabletop RPG. It makes sense in a MOBA. It makes sense in a game like Dota or League of Legends or Heroes of the Storm or whatever it is that your particular MOBA is, because you always start at low levels and you might not make it to high levels. So characters that that scale faster than other characters but start lower, it makes a kind of sense in those contexts. In a game like D&D or any other RPG, it doesn't, for two main reasons. And number one is the very obvious one, which is you don't always start at low levels. What if you want to play a higher level campaign where you start at higher levels? Then the whole drawback of being weak early on doesn't matter. It's completely negated and you skip just to being overpowered, in which case that's just straight up imbalanced, right? Like, even if we accept the premise that being weak early on justifies being overpowered later, then it is negated in that situation. And that is a situation that happens fairly often. The other thing is that you are trading. Here's the thing. Being extra weak early on in the game is not that fun. Especially if you're playing a game that's a power fantasy and you are not powerful, that's not fun. No one wants to do that. Even if it's a price to pay for being powerful later on. And being too powerful also is not fun. At least not for an extended period. Sometimes, yeah, you get the thrill of being like, ha ha, I'm so powerful. But you do that for, 3, 4, 5 sessions in a row, it probably gets old. You want to be well balanced with the game. You want to have the challenge. Because if there's no challenge, what's the point? Right? So you're kind of ruining both sides of the game, except for this narrow window, the point at which you start surpassing other classes and where you become, because there has to be a gradual point at which you are passing the other classes. So there's a point at which you are balanced with them. That is the point where such a class, such a character type is fine to play. But usually it's an extremely narrow window if it exists at all. So you're kind of ruining both sides for this function. And ultimately, I don't think even if you are assuming that all games are going to start at low levels, so you always have to go through the pain to get to the prize at the end, even if that were true, it's not a good excuse. It's not why would you not make the character fun and balanced at all levels? Why are you ruining intentionally certain levels of play to get this weird progression? It doesn't make any sense to me. It kind of makes sense in the context of other genres of games, such as in wargaming. Any kind of competitive game. So I mentioned MOBAs earlier, but really, when it comes down to it, competitive games, this construct makes sense because there's this question. First off, you can assume in those contexts that everything is going to start at a certain level. If you are doing a wargaming campaign, you can say, all right, to be fair, everyone starts at level 1. And then you can have this justification where your character is going to get really strong if he survives. But one of the other players might kill that character first. So he might not make it. And so that adds an element of strategy where okay, I have to protect my weak character while I'm leveling him up until he becomes powerful. And that may cost you strategic resources early on that sort of echo into the late game. And so there's a trade-off there. In a really well-designed game, that can be a good thing. D&D is A, not really well-designed, and B, not a competitive game. This construct should not exist in D&D. It's or in any role-playing game, because role-playing games are inherently cooperative. So do you want to have the character excuse me, would you rather have the character on your team who's not pulling his weight, or would you rather have the character on your team that is overshadowing everyone else? Which of those is better? Which of those is worse? Like, neither of those is a good thing, right? From the other character's perspective, those are both bad. And that's what you are creating. That's the situation that is being created by design when you have classes like this. Now, do classes like this exist in 5th edition? No. I don't think so. Because the classes that classically would be these classes, like the wizard, the sorcerer, maybe the cleric, you could make the argument that in the very earliest editions, 1st edition at least, maybe 2nd, I am not sure, I'm not too familiar with that system, but at least in 1st edition, that these classes were these hyper-scaling character types, where they would start off much weaker than other options, but they would scale harder. That's not the case in 5th edition. In 5th edition, they start off clearly stronger than martial classes. If you are casting spells, you are better than someone who is not casting spells. That's just how 5th edition works. And so, like, you could make the argument that at first level, at level 1 only, a wizard is fairly delicate. Because even with a good constitution score, they could be taken down in a single hit. They don't even need a critical hit. Because they'd have, 6, 7, 8, 9. They have like 9 hit points at most. With a +3 con. Yeah, I don't think any like really low CR monsters probably are doing 9 damage on a non-crit. But on a single critical hit, they're going to go down. They might even die. So you could make that argument. Although even then, like, there are ways for the wizard to avoid having that situation. Silvery Barbs exists to negate crits. They're also less likely to take any damage at all because they can have shield. And if you really want to, the wizard can just spam cantrips all day and keep their spell slots for defensive spells. Probably not the best way to do it, because they're going to be auto-winning 2 encounters a day with sleep. So anyways, the point that I'm getting at is that casters in 5th edition do not have this hyper scaling problem where they start out weaker and then get stronger. But there's a sense that this is true. There is this idea in the community that this happens with casters in 5th edition, that they start off weak and then they surpass martials. When that happens varies depending on who you ask. Because A, it's highly subjective, and B, it's an illusion. They are already past martials at level 1. So, it's not really an issue for 5th edition, but it is an issue for... It's an issue for older games. I can't think of an example in a modern RPG where this actually occurs. If it does, I would expect to see something like this maybe in Worlds Without Number, but I've heard good things about the, so I have the book for Worlds Without Number. I haven't read it, but I've heard good things about it. So I would kind of expect that they would avoid this design trap. So it's more prevalent in older games, but it might also exist in newer games that are modeled after older games, this older style of play. But more importantly, it's part of the overall community's perception of the way that things are or the way that things should be. And I would like to just put it out there that they are not this way and they should not be this way. The idea that you can justify being overpowered by being underpowered elsewhere, at a different time, is just bizarre to me, because that means you're wrong twice. Being overpowered at high level is wrong once. Being underpowered at low level is a second wrong. And 2 wrongs do not make a right. This is what my mama told me. So, there's nothing to be done, really. Like, this is not a problem. Because like I said, it doesn't exist in 5th edition, and it doesn't exist in any modern systems that I have seen. But it is, I think, a trap for some amateur game designers. And my channel is not just for people playing 5th edition who are tired of 5th edition, looking for other games. I also would like to speak to the amateur game designers, people who are looking to build their own games. Please, please, please do not do this. This is a trap for game designers, this idea that it is okay to do this. It's really not. You're going to ruin somebody's play experience either way, at both ends of this axis of underpowered at low levels, overpowered at high levels. Or even vice versa. Like, it could be the other way around. Like, say you're really strong early on, but you don't scale well. That's also bad for all the same reasons. So I would encourage any amateur designers out there, don't do this. Try to make your game work well at every level. It's not that hard to do. It's actually no harder to, well, it is a little bit harder to do than doing it wrong, but like, it's not that hard to do. Yeah, that's my what's the word I'm looking for? That's my admonition to the game design community. Don't do this in cooperative games. Do it in competitive games all the time. Sure, harder scaling characters is great in versus strategy. It's not good for co-op. That's my thoughts on that.